Hi to everyone present in whichever time zone you are. My name is Shivranjani Gandhi, and the topic of my presentation is exploring the threats of service providers working with refugees in Istanbul. I was a master's student last year and I graduated with a master's in social and cultural psychology. And my thesis was about the lives and the lived experiences of the service providers who were working primarily in Istanbul. So there were three groups of people that I basically worked with, who were social workers, interpreters, translators, and teachers. And they were working on ground and they were always on the front lines, working with children and adults in psychosocial support, teaching English. And I was trying to assist them as well as I was trying to co-create relationships on the ground with others as well. And I learned a lot from this experience. Mostly what I learned was that these frontline workers are indispensable to the community. And I think, especially in the pandemic, we can all agree with that. So that is why I chose this research topic. So my main research question was to assess the lived experiences, which are emotional and affective in nature, and understand the motivational consequences of feeling these emotions. I chose this topic for my own personal reasons of my own lived experience and the lived experiences of my friends and colleagues, and mostly because there is a big dearth of research in the well being and mental health of service providers, as well as the emotional processes of service providers. Most of the literature review revolves around clinical work in the trauma settings, and I wanted to work beyond that. And there was also a dearth of research in these topics in the Turkish context. To define my hypothesis clearly, the first one was empathetic understanding will have a significant role as a motivating factor to pursue the career path of service providers. Kamamuta will play a significant role as a motivating factor to pursue the career path of a service provider. Sadness will play a significant role as a motivating factor to pursue the path of a service provider. Uh, I'm sure you're well aware of empathetic understanding and sadness. Kamamuta is a new emotion, and I graduated with my thesis at University of Oslo. That's where the work with Kamamuta is happening in the Kamamuta lab. Basically, it's this feeling of being moved and touched after interacting with a certain human being or watching an interaction vicariously happening. So the feeling that you have of feeling moved and touched, that is known as Kamamuta. Uh, while talking about my methodology, I did a completely qualitative research. I did 12 interviews in total, five on males and five on females. A lot of them were from Syria and some were from Iran, Iraq, and Palestine. And as I said before, I spend a lot of time in the community volunteering, studying, as well as working during my master's. So I was really immersed in the community, which made me very aware of my privilege. And I wanted to also do something about this research. That's why I also did a lot of self-care workshops. And after seeing the emotional impact of this work, and I tried to assist the people I was working with in every way possible. I also developed this ethical reflective practice, which is, I think, very important at an early stage. And I was really happy that I was able to do that while doing my research, in which I was always questioning my positionality of privilege and how I can use that to help other people, even during my research. And I conducted in depth interviews, which were 1 hour in duration, and I created a code book, an interview guide, and I recorded them and I transcribed them verbatim before analyzing them. For my analysis, I use thematic analysis and I use Atlas style software. And definitely, the code books really helped me as a first time researcher to document all those findings. And I used the thematic analysis, the Brown and Karp model of doing thematic analysis, which is very widely used, and it was very useful for a first time researcher like me. I coded the results. I generated six themes in total, and to have some categorization, I made all, most, and some in my thesis as categorization. So if all like 12 to 11 participants said, gave that response, I would code it as all, and most would be 6 to 8 participants, and some would be found in 2 to 5 participants. In the first theme that was generated was that being moved will serve as a motivating factor. As I explained before, Kamamuta was definitely a feeling that created this motivational consequence that made the service provider willing to work with the community members, and also this feeling was wanting to be re-experienced by the service provider. That is why they immersed themselves more and more into the community. So it was a cycle where every day they felt motivated to work, and the next day they wanted to go again to re-experience these positive feelings of being moved by new people and being touched of feeling this warm feeling that they feel. And there were many benefits for uh, the service providers who were working with these people, because they felt these their community relationships were strengthened, and their communal sharing bond was intensified. Uh, Consubstantial assimilation was also a sub theme of this theme, in which people where a woman described that she shared food substances with the beneficiaries, and how that also made her feel Kamamuta, where she felt very warm and moved by the love of the community. And that was also very big major finding of the Kamamuta theme. Here is one example of how a participant described feeling Kamamuta, that she remembered a kid was drawing, and then when she was drawing, she drew a protective shield over a house, and then all of a sudden she sighed, because first time she felt relief, because she was always scared that the house would be destroyed or there would be some harm befalling on her and her family. So that relief of feeling made uh, the service provider feel very like moved and touched and very happy about her work. So yeah, this was one finding, one quotation that I wanted to give here. Uh, Talking about the second theme, experience of sadness serves as a motivating factor. Sadness was definitely, there was mixed results. Sometimes it was just personal distress, but the other times it was to relieve the sadness or to find meaning in the sadness. There were a lot of participants who said that the sadness itself motivated them, because they wanted to overcome it or maybe accept it and then do something about it. Here is one example of like a person who used to vicariously watch a lot of violence and war on the news, and then it made him upset. That's why he decided to get engaged in this social work, so that he could also feel that he's doing something and alleviating distress of others. The third theme was empathetic understanding will serve as a motivating factor. This also gave mixed results, because sometimes empathetic understanding was just leading to personal distress. And according to the theory of empathetic understanding, sometimes to relieve the personal distress, people get actively engaged because they feel that they are doing something for the community, which alleviates the distress. And also sometimes a lot of people just take the other person's perspective, and that motivates them, because each time they feel empathetic and they are able to relieve the distress and their perspectives while working with other people. Here's another quote in which the service provider is relating to a child's experiences, and he can like understand him perfectly, and that empathy is making him feel motivated to work in this profession. The fourth theme was that the personal experiences would serve as a motivating factor as well. Definitely, most of the service providers and generally the people I worked with, it is definitely known that trauma workers and service providers have personal experiences of themselves which motivate them to work in the same field. So, definitely, I found that they had shared identities which they wanted to explore and help other community members. So, definitely their own personal experiences started were a motivating factor for them. And they were also attached to some beneficiaries due to their own similar personal history, which was also giving more, uh, which was propelling them towards this work as well. Here, service provider describes how she could have the shared identity as a mother to the beneficiary, and that affects her working with mothers now. The fifth theme was finding meaning through the experiences of others. This was a really important and interesting finding, because definitely a lot of people said that they wanted to find this will to meaning, as quoted by Viktor Frankl, that they wanted to find meaning and purpose through this work, and which they could find through the vicarious experiences of the beneficiaries and their own lived experiences. So here, a service provider described that she could actually feel that the people who they were loving the process of learning, which motivated her as well and gave her life meaning. And she herself felt motivated to learn and teach, and her work became a very big motivating factor and shaped the overall purpose of her life. The sixth finding that I had was definitely all this is not just positive. A lot of this is it's important to like understand the challenges that are being faced by the service providers as well. That they are not able to demarcate boundaries. They can't like they don't know the importance of self care, because a lot of small organizations are still not able to find the resources to fund these initiatives about self care. And they also feel burnout, and they feel overwhelmed, and they are not able to demarcate their personal and emotional boundaries. So, definitely, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I hope the pandemic is also a realization for these things, which wasn't there till last year. So, I hope all these resources are being gathered, and there can be some free online resources that can be accessed, which are and disseminated to the service providers. Here is one example of the challenge being documented by a service providers, in which he's feeling guilty of a shared identity, and he's being forced to contribute more or go out of the way when he's not able to help the other person. Here, a service provider is talking about the self care and burnout, and how his own personal experiences with them make him very cautious while working with refugees. While talking about the implications, I definitely feel Kamamuta is a positive emotion, and there needs to be more research on it. This was one of the first researches which qualitatively documents the importance of Kamamuta as a motivating factor. So, definitely longitudinal studies which talk about Kamamuta and how people want to experience and re experience this Kamamuta emotion would be very interesting to see. In terms of practical implications, definitely, as the challenges are being faced by service providers, people there needs to be an understanding of developing quick and swift workshops, as well as more and more free resources, not just for bigger organizations, but for grassroots level small organizations where people are not that aware and they could really use these resources. While talking about the limitations of my study, my sample size was relatively small, and there was a bias in the recruitment of participants, because I couldn't uh, access any bigger organizations because of the confidentiality statements, and I didn't have that kind of access to those organizations. But I think working with the grassroots levels community members was much more meaningful and fruitful for me. And another limitation was that I used a cross-sectional design, so I would like to use a longitudinal design in the long term. So yeah, I would also like to use multiple methods and develop a enhanced questionnaire around this, so I can tap more themes next time. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope it was something that was useful to you or something you found interesting. And I hope you take care of yourselves. And um, I hope everything gets a bit better and we adapt well to this pandemic. Thank you so much.